And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another off-season episode of the Assembly Call. We're excited that you are here. Obviously, we don't have a game to break down today, but for the first time in what seems like a long time, we've got practice. The Hoosiers are back practicing, which means that Hoosier Hysteria is right around the corner, which means the games. Heck, we are actually less than a month away from Indiana's first exhibition game, which is extremely exciting. So we'll continue to bear with the Major League Baseball playoffs and the NFL until college basketball season starts. But it is coming, and that means that we're going to start ramping up the episodes for you. We've got tonight's episode breaking down the schedule. We'll probably do a couple more episodes even before the exhibition season starts. So we're excited that you're here watching live, or excited if you're listening on the podcast. However you choose to consume the Assembly Call, we appreciate it. I am your host, Jared Morris. The guy who just disappeared off your screen is Ryan Phillips. Hopefully he will show back up. And we also have Andy Bottoms, our usual crew, -1 as Will DeWitt. Congratulations to him. Actually got a job with the IU Sports Media Department covering some of the IU sports teams. And so he is actually out tonight covering the men's soccer team's game. And so he will not be with us, but Will is here in spirit. So before we start our usual kind of go around the table and give our opening thoughts, I will remind you real quick, go to assemblycall.com/subscribe, get on the email list. We now have over 1,200 Indiana fans on that list. It's growing fast, and that's the best way for us to keep in touch with you. And of course, our bread and butter are the post-game emails, so you'll certainly want to be on the email list before the season starts. With that all out of the way, let's get into our introductory comments, and I will kick things off with tonight's banner moment. And really, tonight's banner moment is an obvious one. It's the fact that whenever Indiana does hang their sixth banner, we're going to have to redesign our shorts. And I say that because if you remember, last year for the Big Ten tournament, Indiana wore new uniforms. And the one feature that everybody seemed to like was the 5 stars on the back of the shorts, 1 star for each banner. Well, those shorts, those stars, have now become an official part of the Indiana uniform. So you will see those 5 stars on the back of the shorts. So again, whenever we do hang banner number 6, whether it's this year, maybe next year, at some point in the future, we're going to have to get new shorts, and that'll be an exciting time. So that's our banner moment. Let's go over to Andy and get his bottoms line, and then we'll see if Ryan is going to show back up.
Well, for me, the exciting thing that's happened recently in the last couple of days is bringing Derek Elston back as the director of player development, a new position, as far as I can tell, on the IU staff, and something that I think is exciting for a number of reasons, not the least of which is, one of the things I've lamented a lot during the last show was just some of the, not having the same guys who had kind of been there through the rough patches and the rebuilding process around to make some of the current players appreciate, how things were at that time and just in general, the kind of struggle and the expectation that is on these guys being part of the team. And so, to see him come back, I think is obviously great for him who, I think this likely suggests he has some interest in getting into coaching and things like that. But I think is also a good guy for the team, from a leadership standpoint. I think a guy who maybe was a little bit under the radar in terms of leadership. But as you listen to some of the, former teammates talk about him and things like that, I think you start to get an appreciation for what he really brought to the team as part of some of those, great teams of those few years ago. And so I think for him to be able to give these guys a sounding board for somebody who really knows what it's like to be in their shoes and also to just give them some advice, ideally around, kind of how to handle the different ways they're pushed and pulled in their time at IU, I think will be really valuable. So I think a great addition to the staff that should, serve benefits in a number of ways, not the least of which is some of the off the court things that we've all talked far too much about in the recent past. So I think exciting for him personally and exciting for IU from a program standpoint.
Ryan, do you have anything to rant about?
Positive rant. Hey, everybody. It's been a couple weeks. I just wanted to let everybody know that the Maui Invitational approved my credential for the Assembly Call. So I will be doing reporting from there, and you can all be insanely jealous. I've covered the tournament several times in the past, and it is, without a doubt, I've been to tons of events all around the country covering them, including the NCAA tournament, things like that. The Maui Invitational is without a doubt the best run tournament or sporting event that I've ever been to. It is amazing. It is so well done, and I am so looking forward to going and seeing this new IU team play in person and getting to talk to some of the guys and give you some coverage from the event. I'm really looking forward to it. Was already going to be there, and I'm very excited to experience the event again for the first time in, I believe, 5 years for me. So very excited, and that's my
Very nice. Don't make us jealous at all. None of us would like to be in Hawaii watching Indiana play in November.
I would never do that to you, Jared. I would
never
rub anything in your face or brag about anything. It's just not my person. People who watch this show know that's just not.
No, it's just not you at all. So, okay, Maui, we said that we're going to use tonight's episode to talk about the schedule because the schedule was finalized just a couple of days ago. And so let's break it down and let's talk about Maui because it's clearly, I mean, outside of obviously the Indiana Duke game and the ACC Big Ten Challenge, Maui is the highlight of the non-conference schedule. And Andy, can you give us some insight real quick? I mean, whatever you have. Obviously, Indiana plays first against Wake Forest. And after that, you know, if they can beat Wake Forest, they'll then play the winner of St. John's and Vanderbilt. And from what I know of just kind of reading around in the preseason, Vanderbilt should be a pretty good team. That's a potential top 15 team that Indiana should be playing there in the second round. How is Wake Forest? Is this a game that we should be looking at as, you know, based on the talent, Indiana should win? Or is that kind of a sneaky, you know, you better not have jet lag type game?
Well, it's interesting. I've been starting to go through some of the preview magazines and pretty much spend any disposable income I have on those. So I'm just trying to do some comparisons between how some of these have them ranked. And so if you look across the four, at least I know that I've looked at and or purchased, you know, those being Sporting News, Lindy's, Athlon, and then Blue Ribbon. I just kind of averaged out the standings there. And so Wake comes in at 12th in the ACC based on the averages. Now, that being said, it's a case where at least something I looked at earlier and made some notes on says they've got their top 5 scorers back. You know, Danny Manning, the coach there, I think there's some rebuilding to be done, but they do have some guys back, although that rings a little bit like some years with IU football where it's like, oh, we have 8 guys back on defense from a defense that was ranked outside the top 100. So it kind of makes you, you know, maybe having the top 5 scorers back in and of itself doesn't mean a great deal. But it is a team that comes in with some experience, but one that at least based on some of the preseason projections feels like one that IU should win. And similarly, Vanderbilt plays St. John's, who is almost a consensus last in the Big East pick at this point. So have to assume that if IU would win, they'd play Vanderbilt, who's by most projections I've seen picked second in the SEC behind Kentucky. So I think that would be a really good early season test for IU and a good game that hopefully we'd be able to see.
Let's try not to project too far into that championship game, although obviously our minds are going to wander there. But Ryan, what are you most looking forward to in Maui?
Well, I think it's great. There's just traditional powers. That tournament is always loaded with big name teams. You know, you always see a top ACC team, a top Big Ten team, a top Pac-12 team, and this year is no different. I mean, look, you've got Kansas, UCLA, UNLV, Indiana, Wake Forest, St. John's. I mean, those are all, teams that have had major success in the past. So it's really cool to see, especially the Kansas, UCLA, and Indiana are all in the same tournament. I mean, that's a lot. That's 3 great fan bases, 3, programs with a ton of tradition. And I love that Maui does that. They don't just have like a showcase team and then everybody else kind of battling it out. Plus, you get to see Chaminade play, and you never know what's going to happen when they're in there. But I just think I'm excited for the entire tournament, obviously, because it's always a fun watch. The teams, the games are always super competitive, but the atmosphere there is always kind of laid back because it is a preseason tournament. So these teams go at it hard on the court, but everybody's definitely having fun and trying to get better. I think most of the coaches go into it as an opportunity to get their teams better because the games, let's face it, very few games until your conference play start really matter that much because it's so early in the season. So it's really an opportunity for guys to get better against really good competition. And I think that's what I'm most excited about is to see these super talented teams. Kansas, UCLA, both loaded. As Andy said, Vanderbilt, very good team that's probably going to be the team that challenges Kentucky, as he said, for the SEC title, at least projected to so far. Indiana is projected to be a top 4 team in the Big Ten. Hopefully we'll be competing with Maryland for the top spot. So you've got all those teams with loads of talent really just trying to figure out how they're going to play this year, how, what direction they're going to take their team and all that stuff. And also, if you get the championship game, obviously that's a huge game, but you're just trying to feel your way through the first couple games and really, get into a rhythm heading into those December games and then conference games.
Have you found a Hawaiian shirt yet that matches candy stripe pants?
I have not, but if anybody can go on Amazon or anything and, find some suggestions, maybe an online store that I am not aware of, I'm game for anything. So
right. We'll find you something.
Yeah, just please let me know. I'll buy it. You don't have to buy it. I'll buy it myself, but just,
Okay. So we're going to talk about the Big Ten schedule. I want to talk with you guys real quick about the exhibition schedule. And look, normally talking about exhibition games is not an interesting topic when we're talking about the schedule, especially when Indiana has been criticized of late of playing so many sub-300 teams in KenPom. But I think Indiana did something interesting with their exhibition games this year, and I want to get your guys' thoughts on it. If you haven't seen, we're playing Bellarmine, which is, I think they're the preseason number 6 team in Division II. And even more notable than that, we're playing Ottawa. And Ottawa is a team that Indiana faced last year in the preseason when they went on their Montreal trip. And Ottawa beat Indiana. And they're one of the top 2 programs in Canada. And if you listen to the episode of Podcast on the Brink that came out today, go to podcastonthebrink.com, was Alex and I talking. And, his impression of Ottawa, seeing them up close, because he was there on that trip, is that this is a team that could compete in a mid-major conference and possibly, even, be kind of like a mid-tier big conference school. Like, this is not, Kennesaw Mountain Landis State coming in here to play, right?
Pretty sure they don't have that in Canada. It's just a random.
That they don't have what in Canada?
Kennesaw Mountain Landis.
Yeah. No. I'm saying this is not like one of those teams coming in to play Indiana. So here's what I like about this is, how do I put this gently? Tom Crean has not always scheduled from a position of confidence. Indiana's scheduling has seemed to lack confidence, has seemed to be self-conscious, as in we need to schedule a whole lot of cupcakes, get a whole lot of wins, and we don't necessarily want to challenge ourselves. Now, we're starting to see that change a little bit. This series with Creighton, whatever, it doesn't seem as good now as maybe when it was scheduled. Scheduling a series with Louisville, the schedule is starting to get better. But the fact that Tom Crean is willing to face a team that beat him less than about a calendar year ago in an exhibition game, in a season when he's got a lot of pressure on him, it tells me that he's pretty confident in this team. Because I feel like he wouldn't schedule this game I know that he wants to get a challenge for his team, but I also think he feels like he's got a pretty good team where it doesn't scare him, in one of the first couple of games of the year to possibly be open to a defeat that would have all of the fans, just all over him. And I want to get your thoughts, because maybe I'm making too big a deal about it. Maybe they're just exhibition games and they don't matter, but I kind of think they do. I think it shows a subtle shift in his mindset that, frankly, I feel pretty good about. Either one of you guys want to jump on that first? No. Andy, why don't you jump on it?
I'll jump in. I was just expecting Andy because I've already talked a lot. Nobody likes that.
That doesn't stop you before.
It really doesn't. No, I think it's a good sign to have. Anytime, like I was saying about Maui, anytime you play good competition, you get better. How much you get better depends on how you play and things like that, and whether everybody buys in. But playing good competition is never a bad thing, and I do think it's kind of great to bring in a team like Ottawa. I mean, look, just because those teams are from Canada, a couple teams they played last year on that trip are very good basketball teams. Just because they play in Canada, people don't recognize it, they don't see them, they've never heard of them. But those are some good teams, and they have some polish, they have some talent, and so bringing in a team like that to play an exhibition is, I think, a great idea. It's different. And I agree. Bellarmine is Bellarmine. How do we pronounce that? I don't even know.
Bellarmine, I believe.
Bellarmine. Okay. Is another team that I've read about being pretty darn good. So, it's a couple. They're exhibition games. I don't think anybody's going to be screaming if we don't beat those teams by 30. It's a chance to work things out. No, I really don't. I think that.
Did you just join this fan base?
All right. Anyone who matters. How about that? Those are chances to work things out and get comfortable on the court with each other. And some of the preseason games are that way, or the early season games are that way too, which is why teams don't play all top 100 schools in the preseason. But I agree that the scheduling has gotten better, and it's a
Okay, and that said, Andy, and feel free to jump in on this topic, but you also still have a quibble with Indiana not scheduling a true non-conference road game, don't you?
Yeah, so, just to go to the exhibition games, I do think it's a good thing for this team. I think Alex brought this up on the episode of Podcast on the Brink that you talked about is, the other games before they head to Maui shouldn't be all that challenging. I know Creighton's in there. They're picked toward the back end of the Big East. So I think to be able to get another couple challenging teams before they do go to Maui and what they're going to face there is going to be important. Give this team some, additional, tough games potentially to fall back on as they look for that. Give Thomas Bryant some extra, some additional challenges for him based on the role that he's going to need to play, and also to try to sort out, what the early season rotation might be. So I think it's definitely a positive thing. I think we can all remember the times when it was, the athletes and actions of the world, and unless Robbie Eggers, turned into who knows what that year that they, played when he was there. And, those games tended not to be very challenging. And so I do think these will present some good challenges and good preparation. As I was looking back through the schedule, I was just kind of curious to see, I know last year, a lot of talk was made about not playing any true road games until the Big Ten season began. They had a few neutral court games. They had those couple in New York and one in Indy. And so I look back really over Crean's whole tenure at IU, but even if you just look at the last, this will be the fourth straight season that there have been no true road games scheduled that weren't part of the Big Ten ACC Challenge. So that's going to guarantee you that pretty much every other year you're going to have one, and that really doesn't have anything to do with what you're trying to do from a scheduling perspective. The last one that was outside of that was Evansville back in the 2011-2012 season. I think it was one of the first games of the season, first year at their new building. So had, scheduled that. And while it wasn't a tough game, it did give another chance to go into an environment where people were going to be cheering against you and some of those things. And, before that, the Kentucky series had some of that where, they're still playing home and homes and that. And I understand why, people want to play in, neutral site events and some of these things. I think IU's done a good job of trying to find those kinds of opportunities to do that with the thought that that's what's going to prepare you for, the tournament and things like that during the season. But if you want to put it all under the guise of, well, I'm doing things to get myself prepared for the regular season, I would argue that, to prepare yourself for the Big Ten season, going to somebody's home court, it doesn't mean that you have to play a big name opponent. But, I think that would be good for some of these teams. And if you're, confident in what you have, you can schedule some of these games and you're going to, they'll play 3 times at IU for you to come there once in a lot of these cases. I know there's, the monetary aspect of things and wanting to have a lot of home games and be able to make the money off of that. But yeah, I do think it's something that has become a bit of a frustration of mine. And I think when you layer that on top of, a lot of the talk of, we want to have, at least one marquee home game. Well, last year that was kind of SMU. I don't know that other than their, early season ranking, anybody got super excited about that one. This year that ends up being Creighton as part of I think the Gavitt games is what they're calling that. And Creighton is not going to get anybody excited. Doug McDermott's not walking through that door. So I don't know that that's one that's going to get people excited. And so I think people, on the one hand have a somewhat legitimate beef that I'm not getting a lot of great, non-conference home games. And at the same time, you're also not challenging the team to go on the road as well. So obviously a lot of moving pieces to setting up the schedule. So I do acknowledge that piece of things, but but definitely something that has me a little frustrated just for a, fourth straight season now to not have played a true road game that wasn't quote unquote required or set up for you. I think is something that they.
I want to dive into the Big Ten schedule because there's a couple stretches as I was looking at it.
Can I make a comment real quick though on that? I mean, I don't think we can lay it all at Tom Crane's feet. The athletic department wants to make money, and that's why they do almost all home games in the preseason. I mean, we're not the only team that does that. There are very few top tier programs that can sell out their buildings that have a lot of true road games. I agree. We should have one or two. I think that goes without saying, at least one or two. But at the same time, he's kind of got his hands tied by the fact that we can sell all those games out and make a lot of money for the university. So, I mean, it's sort of one of those things where there is pressure from above him to have as many home games as possible. And I think you're seeing Syracuse not leave the state of New York until January for the past 10 years or something. Ohio State does the same thing in football. They don't leave the state of Ohio because they know they don't have to. It's stupid, and I agree, and I think it's better for the team to get some true road games, but I don't think that's going to change anytime soon as long as they can make those paydays.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Andy, quick question for you before we jump into the Big Ten talk. Obviously we know how tough the game at Duke is going to be. The Crossroads Classic game against Notre Dame. Notre Dame was a terrific season last year. Very, very good. Obviously they lost some guys. How good are they going to be this year? How tough is that game?
I think just because they've really gotten into, under Bray, particularly these last few years, I mean, they've lost pieces here and there and still have come back and played really well. So I think they have the feel to me of kind of a maybe middle of the pack to kind of upper middle of the pack team in the ACC. They did lose Jerian Grant and Pat Connaughton, and so those are obviously two big pieces for them. But Demetrius Jackson was playing really well toward the end of the year. Zach August, I think, is back. Vasturia, I think, is back. So they had some good young pieces there. They don't tend to be particularly deep, but they also, are a team that has a pretty, consistent system that they stick with. And I think having some guys with some experience will help that out. So I think that'll be a good challenge, probably along the same lines as, playing Butler was there last year. And I think those are games that, again, you kind of get that neutral court feel, but are still tend to be playing pretty good competition. So I think that probably outside of the, the games that are going to happen, the Duke game obviously is the toughest. I think outside of that, Notre Dame is the second toughest, and would fall behind playing Vanderbilt and Maui and potentially some of the other teams there. But in terms of the non-Maui games, that definitely to me is a pretty clear, second toughest. And I think one that, again, as you start to think ahead to, RPI and all that good stuff, playing in the ACC, that's going to look like a quality win. I don't think the wheels are going to come off for Notre Dame where that wouldn't look like a quality win if they picked it up. So I think that'll be a great one from a tournament resume standpoint if IU can pick it up. So I think that definitely becomes an important game. And really, after that Duke game, it's really the only game that is of note. That Duke game's on December 2nd, and really until they start Big Ten play 4 weeks after that, that Notre Dame game is really the only one of any consequence during that stretch.
Yeah. So let's look at the Big Ten schedule. And Andy, I know you want to talk a little bit about how the unbalanced schedule might affect some of the contenders. And I will put the link to this on the blog post page for this episode. But back in May, Alex at Inside the Hall did a nice little article about how the unbalanced scheduling could shape the Big Ten race. And essentially, he ranked the 7 contenders from most difficult to least difficult in terms of their schedule based on, who they play, who they don't play. Maryland was ranked as number 1 because I'm trying to see here who they don't play.
Yeah, they've got. I've got theirs. I actually would not. I would not say theirs is the easiest by any means. I'd say Michigan State probably, to me, has the easiest. If you look,
no, that's what he said. Yeah, he's got Maryland as the hardest, and then Michigan State is the easiest, and then us the next easiest after Michigan State.
Yeah, I mean, it depends to me who you look at. If you include, I kind of looked at the top 6. There's kind of seems to be a pretty clear breaking point, after you get past Maryland, IU, Michigan State, Purdue, Michigan, and I threw Wisconsin in there just because of, obviously Bo Ryan's track record and things like that. To me, you get past that into the Ohio State or Iowa type range. To me, those aren't necessarily, I wouldn't consider them in the same, in the same breath. I think, you could make the argument that Wisconsin's is the hardest. If you assume, and again, I'm kind of averaging out some of these preseason projections, which make kind of the order of those: Maryland, IU, Michigan State, Purdue is kind of the top four. Wisconsin has home and homes with all four of those teams, and they have a single play at home against Michigan. So to me, they've got 8 games against the top top 4 teams. That is obviously more than anybody else. Certainly couldn't have any more than that. Maryland, if you look at theirs, they play IU and Michigan State only once, but both of those games are on the road. And then they have home and homes with Purdue, Michigan, Wisconsin. So definitely think Maryland's is up there. Purdue's is relatively similar to Maryland's, I would say. They do get Maryland twice. They play only at IU. They have Michigan State just once at home, and then they've got home and homes with the others. So I think those 3 definitely are the toughest in some order. Like I said, I kind of ranked it as Wisconsin the toughest. But if you look at it then on the flip side of that, I would agree with his assessment of Michigan State as the easiest. They have single plays against Maryland, IU, both of which are at home, and then Purdue and Michigan, both of which are on the road. So in the sense that Wisconsin has 8 games against the top 4, Michigan State only has 3, another one of those top 4, and obviously can't play themselves, but they only have 4 games against the top 5 overall. So theirs to me seems to be the easiest, although to be fair, IU only has single plays against all those same teams as well. They play Maryland once at home, Michigan State, the only game against them is on the road, Purdue at home, and then Michigan away. So again, only 4 games against the top 5, and 2 of IU's other single play road games are against the bottom few teams. So Penn State and Rutgers are the other 2. So not ones that you get overly worried about playing. And they do get Minnesota twice and Nebraska twice, both of whom are projected in the top or the bottom 4 of the league. And then Michigan's kind of somewhere in the middle where they've got a little bit more at the top than Michigan State and IU, but a lot of their games against the top teams end up being at home. So that's kind of how I would rank them. Probably Michigan State easiest, then IU, then Michigan, and then the other 3 in some order. So it definitely could have an impact, particularly as you look at Maryland, where playing IU and Michigan State both on the road and not getting them coming to their place could be something that makes a big difference by the time you get to the end of the season.
Yeah, I think it's amazing if you look at Indiana's schedule. First of all, they open with 2 road games, Rutgers and Nebraska, both that they should win. So that's 2 road wins right out of the break in the conference if you can win those games. Obviously, we've counted on road wins before and not gotten them,
especially at Nebraska.
Yeah, so let's not get ahead of ourselves. But at the same time, then you come back, you get Wisconsin at home. You avoid the Kohl Center all year. You don't have to play Maryland College Park. You play them at home where we blitzed them last year, and then you get Michigan State once on the road, which obviously playing at Michigan State is not easy, and Indiana has proven that over and over and over again. But
and by the way, we don't miss the Kohl Center. We do have to go there.
Do we?
We play at Wisconsin January 26th.
Yeah, they play them twice. They play them twice within a few weeks.
Oh, I moved that on there. Okay, so we do play at Wisconsin, which is totally Tom Crean's white whale, and we can all imagine that'll probably not end well. But
some jackass picked us to upset him at Wisconsin.
Yeah, seriously.
I don't remember who did that.
But you play Ohio State at home. But the big one for me is Maryland. You only get Maryland once. You only get Michigan State once. Yeah, it's at Michigan State. Okay, they're probably going to win in East Lansing. But playing Maryland at home, again, killed them last year. And I think it's a very favorable schedule for IU. Because all those middle teams, you can lose to them, but we're going to be favored in most of those games. I think, forget about the betting line, but just you're going to go into them with confidence that you're going to win those games. So, it'll be really interesting to see how this all plays out. But you've got to think off the top of your head that this is a very favorable schedule.
I agree. I think it is. And when I looked at it, there were really two stretches that I think will determine how the season goes for Indiana. It's obviously hard to look at what stretches are important because when you play people is going to make such a big difference once you get into the season. But we only have the information that we have right now. And as I looked at, I'll be interested to see what you guys think. The two stretches that I looked at as the most important, I mean, clearly when you look at the schedule, the end of the season stretch jumps right out at you because the final 6 games are at Michigan State, home against Nebraska, home against Purdue, at Illinois, at Iowa, and home against Maryland. And you're right, we did blitz Maryland last year, but that's still the preseason number 1 team in America. You know, at Illinois, at Iowa, even the best IU teams have struggled playing in those venues. Home against Purdue, I mean, look, we all hope that Indiana fares better against Purdue this year than last, but that was a really bad matchup. And at Michigan State is at Michigan State. So out of 6 games, you've got 1 against Nebraska at home that you feel really confident about. And then 5 games, you know, that really, you know, could kind of go either way. And if this team has any of the struggles that we've seen previous Tom Crean teams have, like last year's team that dropped the final 3 games of the regular season, they're facing teams that could really take advantage of that. Now, what I think Indiana really needs to do to set themselves up for a tough stretch at the end is really do well in this middle stretch. And so, you know, Ryan, you mentioned those 2 road games to start out. Within the Hoosiers face, as you said, home against Wisconsin, home against Ohio State, at Minnesota. 2 home games, but Wisconsin and Ohio State will both be talented. Either one of those teams could come into Assembly Hall and win if Indiana's not ready. And we know that the barn in Minnesota is the barn in Minnesota.
They have a voodoo curse on that place.
They do. I know. So we've got that tough stretch of games, right? Now, after that, you've got home against Illinois, home against Northwestern, at Wisconsin, home against Minnesota. 3 home games against teams that are bottom half of the Big Ten or back, Illinois, Northwestern, and Minnesota. And, of course, the at Wisconsin game, you know, it's hard to have confidence going in there. But that's a stretch where I really think Indiana's got to go 3-1 and take care of those games at home against teams that are good enough to beat you if you're not ready to play, but teams that this Indiana team, talented as they are, should win by 8 to 12 points. That's going to be really important because this team, if you look back at the schedule, they have struggled in that kind of late January, early February stretch too. There's been kind of a lull there. And if they do that with these winnable home games, they're really going to make it tough on themselves for the tough stretch late. Are there any stretches for you guys looking at it here in the preseason that kind of jump out as, you know, being particularly important, particularly tough? Andy, any for you that really stand out?
Well, definitely the last stretch that you mentioned, we had exchanged a couple emails beforehand. That's definitely one that stands out. Just, you know, you think back to last year, how the team really struggled on the stretch, and obviously that had NCAA tournament implications and questions and all those things. And I think to be able to go into the postseason with some momentum is obviously a nice thing to have. The other one that stood out to me was really that beginning stretch, and you touched on a lot of these games. You know, to me, there's a chance to really get out of the gate strong and not even necessarily for the purpose of opening up a lead, but also just to get some confidence and get off to a good start, pick up a couple road wins. So, you know, opening at Rutgers, at Nebraska, those are widely viewed as the bottom 2 teams in the league. So you get a couple road games out of the way. 2, you have winnable road games where it shouldn't be a terrible, you know, environment based on the other team's talent level, and got a chance to get off to a couple good victories there. And then you come home for 4 of the next 5 games, you know, the Wisconsin and Ohio State that you mentioned, that again, tough teams, but playing on your home floor, a chance to get some confidence. And then heading into that Minnesota game, lots of nightmares at the barn over the course of time. But again, Minnesota is pretty much universally viewed in the bottom 4 teams of the league. So, you know, your first 3 road games are against, you know, 3 of the bottom 4 teams in the league. And in a league where, you know, picking up road wins is always such a huge deal and trying to take care of home, to be able to get 3 of those pretty early on starts to put some pressure on other teams, and also gives IU, you know, a pretty good springboard as they get going. And then, as you mentioned, you've got Illinois and Northwestern after that. So, you know, if you end up 7-0 potentially in that stretch heading into Wisconsin, would certainly be good to have some confidence going in there, because past performances in that building are not what one would use to summon any shred of confidence heading into that game. So I think if they can get off to a good start, I think that's helpful, gives them some momentum and confidence going in. And then that last stretch becomes really important as you hopefully are in contention for a Big Ten title at that point, and have some chances to, get head-to-head wins over some of the teams you're likely to be competing with, or let them back in it, or let them pass you by. So I think those are the two kind of, the bread of the Big Ten sandwich, if you will, that becomes, the most important stretches in Big Ten.
Yeah, I think that if you look at that first stretch, that was going to be my answer. I mean, you got a chance to take 2 road games early, regardless of who they're against. You get road games on your resume. I think road wins on your resume. I think that's a big deal. And then you get, coming off those 2 games, you get Wisconsin at home. Wisconsin doesn't have Frank Kaminsky. They don't have Sam Decker. I mean, that's going to be early in the season before they've had a chance to really possibly gel and get Big Ten confidence. You get them early. You get them at home. Take out Bo Ryan's team. It's not been easy. You don't usually get chances like that against a Bo Ryan team where it might be struggling to find an identity early in the season. I mean, you get them on January 5th, which is a huge break for Indiana, in my opinion, to get that home game then.
It feels like a sweep the leg moment. Just right there. You just have to.
Absolutely. Vulnerable deer wandering in the woods, and you got a perfect shot. Take it. So, yeah, you get that. Then you get Ohio State, who, I mean, without D'Angelo Russell, I mean, what are they going to be this year? A lot of question marks there. That's 2 big-name teams, regardless of how they're going to be this year. That's 2, that for confidence standpoint, you can say, oh, man, we beat Wisconsin and Ohio State, especially early. And then you go up to the barn and, Dickie Pitino's team in that cursed arena.
Did you say Dickie Pitino?
Yeah, I call him Dickie. What? It's not Rick.
I hadn't heard that before.
He goes by Richard. I mean, come on, it's Dickie. But so, yeah, I think that those 5 games to open the season are huge. There's 3 road games in there that are all very winnable. Plus, you face 2 traditional powers that you can take out at home early in the season while they're still figuring out their identities. I mean, that's a very optimistic look to say that you're going to go 5-0 there, but I think it's very possible. And it also gives this team, which is going to have some younger players playing solid roles and big roles, it gives them a lot of confidence that they can compete in the Big Ten, that they could take this. And, hey, if Maryland across the country struggles at all to open the year, you could say, hey, maybe this conference is ours. So I think that opening the Big Ten season, obviously you want to finish strong. There's no question about that. Andy gave that as his answer. So I'm giving the early season. I think that's a very important part of the schedule, and I think that those 5 games could determine,
Yeah, I mean, it's ultimately kind of a meaningless debate because you want to win all the games, and they're all important once you get to them. But I guess the way I look at it is, look, this team was 5-1 last year and then limped to a 4-8 finish. And if we're looking for this season to be different, which I think we all expect and hope, then, I mean, a fast start, you get there and you're like, okay, now it really begins. Now can we actually do something different? And that's where it just looks to me like the schedule sets up for another good start. But if whatever it is inside of this program that has caused it to fade, if that isn't changed, if that's not different, then this schedule really sets up to take advantage of that again and just run this team right through the ringer of of late January, February, and early March. And if that happens again, then we're going to be in the same position where we're just, hanging on Selection Sunday, limping into the tournament, and probably have a similar fate. And we know that this season has to be different than that, and that it should be different than that.
Well, I also think you have to look at last year to remember that we went 5-1 and we're very gimmicky. With the 5-out no-in game against Maryland. I mean, we didn't have a post player in that game, really. We played with 5 guards, essentially. I mean, Colin Hartman's a forward, but still, he was playing like a guard. And I think that, those wins, while it was great when it was going on, you kind of had this sinking feeling in the back that, all right, you know what? We need a post player. We need somebody to step up as a post player. We were constantly waiting for Hanner Mosquera-Perea, who apparently is the gift that keeps on giving to this program. Guys on the interior to step up and, do something. And you were kind of like hoping we'd bide our time winning games until that happened. This team's going to have a different feel. I just get that sense that we're not going to be looking for other elements to come in and help it. I think we've kind of already got everything we need. They just need to play right. and play the right way. So I don't think it's going to be like last year where we're kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. I think this year, if we did get off to a fast start, it would be more of a, we have confidence in what this team can do because they're different than the last couple of years. Obviously, you're right. You want to finish strong. There's no question about that. You want to finish on a roll. You want to win games in your conference tournament. You want to have some momentum going into the tournament. But at the same time, I think this team, with the amount of young players that are going to be playing, I mean, Thomas Bryant, you're going to have Juwan Morgan probably playing a pretty significant role now, James Blackman Jr., Robert Johnson. I mean, you're going to have these guys playing a lot. You want them to realize that last year, maybe for the guys who were here last year, the fast start wasn't a fluke. They ran out of steam, but at the same time, maybe they can build on that and have a fast start and maintain it. So I just think for a confidence standpoint,
that was a good enough point that I clicked on your screen to give you props. Did you guys notice that little bonus feature right down there in the corner? If you make a good point, it's like what's that show, Around the Horn, where Tony Reale like clicks on stuff.
I can't believe Ryan's winning this. This is ridiculous.
I know. Yeah, I was going to say we can go to final thoughts, but now clearly we have to filibuster. Oh, and now we're just egging him on.
Fan favorite.
Is he clicking on his own? Is that possible? How is this?
I think Tom Crean is watching the show and just upvoting his fan club president.
Tommy, love you.
All right. So I think we've covered everything that we can talk about with the schedule. If we do any more, it's just going to be so far into the rampant speculation that it won't even be meaningful. But this was a fun. It's always fun looking at the schedule ahead of time.
Never do that.
No. Never. So let's jump into some final thoughts. Andy, if you want to kick us off, and let's see how many props you can get with whatever verbal brilliance you give us right here.
Man, that's a lot of pressure.
I'll give you a prop.
I thought we could have rampant speculation about what Perea's blood alcohol level is right now. That would probably be. I'm just gonna assume it's over the legal limit.
Allegedly.
Oh yes, obviously. Totally fine. Anyway, no, I mean, quite honestly, just excited to be this close to having real games to talking about the schedule. Even looking over it in preparation gets you excited. Like I said, I've been purchasing preview magazines like they're going out of style. So good to have stuff to look at. Starting to think a little bit about early season bracket projections, which probably places me on some kind of watch list, I would assume.
Yeah.
But whatever. So I think that's exciting, and it's just always an exciting time to get the season started. And these past couple off seasons, I think have maybe made IU fans loathe the off season that much more. Maybe for different reasons than there just wasn't basketball to be played. But I think there's a lot of things to be excited about with this team. I think a lot of the things that we've heard so far have been positive, although I can't say that that's maybe different than other years or other programs to think that positive stories coming out about what's going on. But I do think the Elston thing is going to be a really great thing for this team, and hopefully a guy that can really people can rally around and get excited about, and that will be a good resource for the players as they go through the season, and just excited to get things started. I think that's the big thing for me is, to your point, we spent 45 minutes trying to beat a schedule to death, largely because it feels like, what else are you going to talk about? So to have actual games and, coaching rotations to criticize and things like that, I think will be a welcome change for us here.
Ryan,
pulled in front of Ryan. Cut him, knock him out. Knock him out, cut him up.
Thanks for cheating, Jared.
Ryan, your final thought.
On there. It is my final thought. First of all, two things. One, I think I didn't get a chance to talk about the Derek Elston thing. I think that is phenomenal. I think it's something we can all be happy about. He was a great kid when he was here. He was a leader, kind of an under-the-radar leader because he wasn't on the floor all the time and was a reserve player. But everybody talks about how important he was to that team. Great guy, great kid, excited that he's back with the program. Also want to say we haven't been on, I haven't been on since this happened, but to our good friend Galen Clavio for becoming the head of the Sports Journalism Institute.
Yes.
That has now been moved to Bloomington. Congratulations. We're all very happy for him. And when we finally make our combined trip to Bloomington, we will, have to celebrate. So that's awesome, and I'm very excited for him. And as for the
Ryan's
team,
just pandering for
Totally.
votes
Totally.
at this point.
He's just trying to think of people who might be watching and say something nice about them.
Mom, how you doing, Mom? If you could, right here. It's no. I do want to say though that it's been a good couple weeks for Indiana just because we're back to basketball. The practice, seeing their workout videos and things like that. I mean, those are really intense. Get you really excited about it. I'm excited for the season to start. We're not that far away, even though we won't be there for Hoosier Hysteria because these two guys can't go. I think that it's going to be really fun getting started with basketball again, like actual basketball, and actually watching these guys on the court and seeing what they can do because there's a lot to be excited about with this team. And I'm excited to get going. I love the off-season shows, but let's get some basketball.
I agree. By the way, if you're listening on the podcast and you don't know why we're laughing and talking about these upvotes, instead of doing this on a Google Hangout, we're actually recording it as a blab. If you go to blab.im, it's a new kind of live video service. And it's pretty cool. We're pretty excited about it. So we did this as a test. We'll see how we like it. Maybe we'll start doing this in the future. But so far, people seem to like it. It's kind of fun. But if you're not quite getting those references, that's what we're talking about. Ryan, you absolutely said what I wanted to say for my final thought, which is just a big congratulations to Galen. Obviously, he's a friend of the show. He's been on here. I actually recorded some videos with him for our 50 Greatest Hoosiers series, which kind of got slowed down on, but which we're still working on. And it's so great what he's doing and what the sports media department at Indiana University is doing. I had the privilege over the last week of interviewing several students for our internship program. This is the second year that we're doing the Assembly Call internship. Last year, Will DeWitt was one of our interns, and he has stayed on in kind of a permanent position and is just doing incredible work for us. Has even started his own live post-game show for the Bears Brothers, if you haven't checked it out yet. And, I had a chance to interview some new students, and these were freshman students that I was interviewing. And the amount of experience that they have just with their own blogs, with sports media or student media that they did in high school, on camera work, and their maturity, their experience, their knowledge. I mean, it's really impressive. And so what's happening with sports media at Indiana University is something that all IU alums should be proud of, and especially those of us who are sports fans who, dabble in sports media as we do here with Assembly Call. I just know, reading the updates from Galen, speaking with the students, it's incredible what's happening there. Obviously, the Cuban Center is just going to accelerate that. But the Cuban Center is only going to be as good as the people on the ground who are implementing that and who are there day to day as the role models for the students. And when you have people like Galen and when you have people like Jeremy Gray in the athletic department kind of setting that tone, it's really great to see what's going on. And so hat tip to all of those people, and hat tip to everybody that I was able to interview for the internship position. We're excited about making that decision and then introducing those folks to you, because we have some great candidates. And that means that we'll end up having a great intern or two who will help us bring you Assembly Call content this year, which we're really excited about. Well, thank you very much, everybody who watched live. Let us know what you think of the new format. If you like it, if you hate it, you can post in the chat. You can email me privately at jared@assemblycall.com. If you have something that you don't want Ryan or Andy to read because it's critical of them, I get it. We get those emails all the time.
I don't want to hear the criticism either.
I actually enjoy it. So.
Okay, I'll forward them on to you. But yeah, and again, go to assemblycall.com/subscribe. Get on the email list. You get updates of shows. We'll have a couple more news roundups before the season starts, and then it gets crazy, as you know. And email is one of the best ways that we have to communicate with you, to get you our post-game emails, which we only send to subscribers. So make sure that you're on there, and we will let you know. We're probably going to do another show next week. We want to do a couple more of these before the exhibition season starts, because once the games start, it's hard to do any midweek shows. So stay on the lookout at Assembly Call on Twitter, on the email list. We'll let you know when new episodes are coming. Thank you so much for your continued support of the Assembly Call, and we will talk to you all very soon. Have a good one, everybody.